Good afternoon. High Prairie School Division would like to acknowledge that we're meeting today in High Prairie, located within the ancestral and traditional territory of the Indigenous peoples of this area. This land is and will continue to be home to the Cree, Métis, and other First Nations residing within the boundaries of Treaty 8. We acknowledge the elders and knowledge holders that are still with us today and those that have gone before us. We'd also like to acknowledge this land is also home to the four-legged, the flying, crawling, and swimming things. It's also home to the rock beings and the plant nations. We share this land with many others, and we must walk carefully and be mindfully of the impacts we have on those we share the sacred land, air, and water with. We borrow these lands from our future generations, so we must leave them a healthy environment in which they can thrive. It's a privilege and an honor to live, learn, work, play, and grow on Treaty 8 territory. Are there any additions to the agenda? No. This computer. Go ahead, Steve.
Yes, the motion to adopt the agenda as presented.
Thank you. All those in favor? Thank you, that's carried. Previous minutes, any questions, comments? Errors or omissions on the previous minutes? Thank you, Tammy.
As the minutes of the regular meeting of the Board of Trustees held on October 28th, 2025 be adopted as presented.
Questions, comments, concerns? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? It's carried. Delegation. It's that time of year again. Welcome. We'll do some quick introductions. We have some new people, so I'll let you start.
Brandon Gagnon with M&P and Peace River. I'm senior manager on the audit. Typically, I'm here with my colleague Ted Decline, and he does all the talking, but he's entrusted me to do it this year. So hey, feel free to give me lots of questions. Yeah, hopefully it goes well.
Thank you.
Tammy Hinkle, High Prairie High Prairie Ward, trustee.
Lynn Skrupnik, Ward 1, Donley, Valeria.
Joy McGregor, board chair, and I reside in Slave Lake.
Murray, CEO.
Adam, deputy.
Steve Adams, Ward 4, Slave Lake.
Aaron Scholl, vice chair, trustee from the West End.
Michael Stribchuk, trustee from High Prairie.
All right, take it away.
hiccup.
Sorry.
Pointed to you.
Okay.
Kyle Nichols, director of communications.
And do you know the lady in the black?
Just a little.
All right, we'll go ahead and turn the floor over to you.
Okay, so for all of you who've been here before, I know our presentation in the past, we have two documents. So the bigger one, the audited financial statements. So that's the 40-page one. So we'll go through that one in more detail. The other one is the colored document. This is our report to the board, so our audit findings report. So I'll go through that one after this. But as before in past years, like I said, there's lots of information coming at you. So feel free to stop me on the page and if you have more questions. Myself and Darla, we should be able to give you answers or at least go back and find those answers. So like I said, I'll go through it at a fairly high level, try to keep everybody's attention as much as we can for these statements. I know there's a lot of information to get through. So like I say, we'll get started on the big document. So dated today, pending, like say the board's approval. First page on there, first table of contents just kind of goes through various schedules and programs on it. The next page with our logo at the top there is the independent auditor's report. So this is a pretty standard report each year. If there were any issues or anything like that, as far as qualifications, problems, that would be documented here. So you can see the first part is our opinion. So essentially we're providing a clean audit report and nothing is materially misstated. So the financial statements are clean report for this year. So no different from prior years. The basis for our opinion is down below. Other matters is just a section that we kind of highlight, mentioning that there's a few unaudited schedules towards the back of the statements that are just for information purposes as part of Alberta Education's template. So no changes on that. The rest is just responsibilities of the board. And then the next page just talks about our responsibilities as the auditors. And down below is just dated today with our signature there for approval. So if you go to page, it's actually page 4. Here's where we get into the numbers. So this is a statement of financial position, and then the columns there are 2025, 24. So I'll kind of just go through the main ones, highlight any big changes for everyone. Obviously, we start with cash there, 4.9 million, down from 5.7 last year. Accounts receivable, 269,000, last year, 287. A lot of it made up of First Nations amounts to be received after year end, so no big change on that. Other financial assets, so 720,000. Again, there'll be further notes to those ones on the back pages that'll explain that. But overall, you can see total financial assets this year of 5.8 million. Last year at this time, 6.6 million. And like I said, that 720, that's the investment in the Ardent insurance. So that's where that big number's coming from, and increased in value quite a bit this year, so. And then down below, we get into the liabilities. So we have accounts payable, 780,000, last year, 1.1 million. Those can vary depending on year ends, timing of payables, things like that, when projects are ongoing. So no big concerns there. The unspent deferred contribution. So this is a good one. So this is funds that were received but not yet spent at the end of the year. So there'll be a big long schedule if I learn that later. But the biggest component of that jump this year is the $800,000 collegiate fund grant that was received in the spring of 2025, and that'll be spent next year as well. So
This year.
this year, yeah, the coming year. So that's the big dollar amount jump on that one is the main one. Employee future benefits, $10,000. So that is the retention bonus. That's just for Murray now. Before it had multiple people, it had a balance of 40,000 and it's gone down over the years. So that's what that is. The asset retirement obligation. So that hasn't changed from last year. If everyone remembers, that's the big amount that had been set up from a new accounting standard that essentially all public sector have to report their liabilities for asset retirement. So things like remediation, asbestos, things like that. So that kind of came into play 2 years ago, and that's where that big 6.3 million comes from. It's essentially work that could be required on the school buildings in the future. So there's a full calculation and how that kind of got derived and where that came from. There's more information on that and kind of where that number came from, but essentially that is a liability that could happen in the future over a period of who knows how many years, but essentially that's the number on the books now, and it should be looked at every year to determine if there are changes. Is there any changes to any of the schools? Has there been remediation? For the most part, Alberta Infrastructure deals with that kind of stuff, so you'll just get the information and the numbers that would reflect that. So nothing new for this year for that number for sure.
So something like a modernization of a school that upcoming would definitely affect us.
It would impact that for sure, yeah. Because then the infrastructure would go through their process, identify if they have to remediate anything, who knows, right? It could be asbestos in the walls. Typically, that's what we've seen in the past. And I know other divisions, if they're building a new school, they have to tear down the old one, then they deal with that remediation at that time. Essentially, you would just get that information from them and that becomes in your financial statements, but definitely could reduce that number.
Yeah. Okay.
Surely.
Would inflation impact this number at all?
It does, like we do assess that every year. The amount is just trivial, so it's not adjusted. Something that we're also looking at whether there's been changes or anything like that, right? Like, has anything occurred where you know there's remediation to be done? So for the most part, unless there's an infrastructure type project or modernization, that number likely is not going to change a whole lot. I know it's a significant number, which you look at the number of buildings, schools, not just schools, but also any non-school buildings based on the year when it was built. It's kind of where that factors in. So you have multiple amounts of schools that make up that 6 months. And essentially the calculation was done. A lot of school divisions, some ended up paying out of their own pocket to get reports done. They were spending hundreds of thousands of dollars to have those assessed. You could just take the previous remediation work that had been done and then you have a rate per square meter. So then you have your insurance information that says the size of the buildings. We can at least audit that information. Then you would apply that rate to the square meters of the building. So essentially that's where the calculation came from. So you're looking at $120, $130 per square meter per the size of the buildings, right? It's quite a bit of, like I say, information on that end, but nothing to change for this year at least. Overall, that's your net financial assets. So it's a negative 2.5 million, last year 1.3. The main change there in cash that we mentioned before. And then we get down below into the non-financial assets. So obviously the biggest one you can see tangible capital assets at 35 million. So that's your capital assets net of depreciation, so your cost less depreciation. That'll fluctuate depending on projects ongoing. Prepaid expense, pretty consistent, up a little bit. Some of it is just timing of when things are paid for, subscriptions, things like that, insurance. Purchased intangibles and other, so that's 555,000, that's your inventory at your end. So that one doesn't fluctuate a whole lot year after year. Then we get down below, so after that, there's the spent deferred capital contribution, so that's a big number there, 21 million. If anyone can recall, that's related to capital assets that have yet to be depreciated. So the money's been spent, they just get recognized into revenue as the amortization is there each year, so that's where that big number is, and we'll get into a more detailed schedule on that later on. So overall, you can see net assets, 13.384 million, last year 13.7. Not a huge swing overall in the total there, but that's where that's composed of. The next page, the statement of operations, so here's the income statement for the year. So you'll see the far left is the budget column for 5, the actual, and then the actual for the prior year. So obviously, school division is the biggest component, government of Alberta, 42.7 million for actual, your budget was 43.8. Federal and government grants, pretty consistent, 4.8 million actual, the budget was 4.6. Fees, the budget 171, 165,000. Sales, services, products, pretty close to budget there. Your investment income, 498,000 up from 348. A big swing in that was the ARMIC investment, so that's where that gets flowed into as well. So that kind of increased that number. Donations and contributions, as you'll know, this can swing year over year, just depending on who's giving money. The big one this year, Buchanan family giving a bunch of money, so that's where that big bump up is. Yeah. So that was quite a big difference from last year for sure. Other revenue, 150,000, budget 94, so pretty close overall. So if you look at your total revenue, 50,296,000, and then the budget 50,471,000, up from last year there, 49.5 there, 9.6, sorry. Your expenses down below, so it's just sorted by instruction, grades 1 to 12, operations, maintenance, transportation, the various types of expenses or groupings, sorry. So overall, obviously the biggest one, grades 1 to 12, 36.7 million. That's what we would expect. Budget at 38.3. The other one's pretty similar to prior year, not a ton of change there. But overall, you can see your total expenses, 50.4 million. And then last year's our budget, 50.4. So overall, that's where that annual surplus deficit this year, 163,000. Last year is 668. So overall, that's where it comes into play. You're opening at 13.5 and now your accumulated is 13.3. So that's kind of the operations in a nutshell for the year for revenue. Next page, page 6 is the statement of cash flow. Well, I won't go into too much detail on this one. It just kind of shows where your cash went from the opening balance of 5.7 to 4.9 at the end of the year. So what did you spend dollars on? So you can see it's broken out by first chunk there is your operating transactions. So you generated 1.08 million in operations. The biggest portion of where you spend the money is in capital. So acquisition of capital assets and then net proceeds from disposal of some assets. So overall 2.2 million spent on capital. So that's where most of the cash goes on that. So, and then down below, there's the financing component. So your increase in spent deferred capital, which is the amortization factor into the building there. So overall that factors in. So that's kind of just showing you where the cash went in the year. So most of it, like I say, the difference in capital assets is typically what happens. Quite a few projects and various assets purchased in the year, right? Next page, page 7. This is a change in net financial assets. So we'll go through this one in too much detail. It just shows where that bottom number there, 2.5 million of net financial debt. How did that change in the year? So a lot of items I've already mentioned already. So just kind of another schedule from Alberta Ed that factors into that. Page 8 is the statement of remeasurement gains and losses. So there are none, so that just still is blank from last year as well. And then sideways one here. So page 9 is the schedule 1. This is a good one. This is the schedule of net assets. You remember at the beginning we mentioned that big number, 50.3 million. What is that made up of? So that's your accumulated surplus overall time for the operations of the school division, right? So we have basically 4 components here. So we have your investment in tangible capital assets in the middle. of 8.2 million, and that's your, basically your net book value of your capital assets less any debt. And then your column over kind of towards the end, your unrestricted surplus, so that's your regular operating surplus deficit for the year, so that 1.2 million is where that's coming from. And then you have your reserves, so you're internally restricted, so you have your operating reserves and your capital reserves. And this schedule's gotten so big that there's another page after this that shows what those operating and capital reserves are. School instruction and all that stuff. Essentially operating 120,000, capital reserves 3.7. Well, a lot of these ones, the main thing that we're looking at is reserves are used for long-term planning. Say you were to generate $1 million in a surplus, well, where, let's show that in. Set that aside. That's where reserves, over the years, there's been some negative balances in some of the accounts, so there's always areas for improvement of allocations of the surplus over time, right? So sometimes some of these reserves have just been there for decades, and you get a new regime coming in and nobody knows. We have 3.some million here set aside, like what is that for, right? So it's always a good thing to look into in the future of, should we be changing some of these allocations, right? At the end of the day, you're not changing your revenue and expenses or your cash. This is just a fraction of what's already happened, right? And where do you allocate these amounts? So some of these, there's always like the areas for reallocation and planning on that stuff, right? So that one, the next page, if anyone's curious, it's going to have a lot more information on that. So it shows you, like, say, the operating capital reserve, school instruction, operations, system admin, transportation, etc. And you can just see at the bottom, there's some negative balances on there. So there's definitely some spots where there should be some reallocation in the future, because we shouldn't have a negative balance in a reserve. But at the end of the day, it's just more so a component of that total. Where is it going, if you're gonna reallocate it from reserves, you're just gonna move it into that unrestricted. So you're just kind of moving between the two. So you're not kind of playing games. Alberta Ed knows in the past this was presented differently, where people would play games and move money here, move it there, so it would look better. Now it's all kind of encompassed in one, right? So there is no, you can't move it here so it looks better for the statements. It is what it is. The big number is that big number at the bottom, that 13.3 million. That's what's been accumulated over time for the division. So this is, like I say, more just a long-term planning. Good for information and future planning purposes. The next one, so Schedule 2. Schedule 2 is the scheduled deferred contributions. So this is funds that have been received but not yet spent. And then the bottom portion is the funds that have been spent and have not been amortized yet, that big 21 million. So this schedule is another one where it's gotten so big over the years, it's on another page. So if you want to flip to the next one, we can see the first, like, it's basically broken out into 3 portions. So the first section there is your deferred operating dollars that have yet to be spent. So you can see at the bottom half, the far right side on that section, $1.2 million is operating dollars that have yet to be spent at August 31st. So the big reason the jump up in that one is that grant that we mentioned that had yet to be spent. That's sitting in deferred revenue, part of that $1.2 million. Then the second section, the next one is basically unspent capital money. So things like CMR that is strictly for assets. If there were funds that weren't yet spent for that, that would be in that total there. So you had 332,000 last year in CMR dollars. Those have been spent in the year. So nothing in the spent deferred capital. And then it just shows that unspent amount of 0.2 million that we mentioned earlier. The very bottom section, now that's the big one there. It's basically made up of buildings that have yet to be amortized. Gets brought into income. You can see there, that's the 21 very well. Just more further details, a lot of different columns and variety of different sections. Essentially, Alberta infrastructure and the buildings is the biggest component. Schedule 3, page 13. The schedule of operations. So this is essentially the income statement we went over earlier, just broken out in a bit different view. So it has by type and by object business. So type of revenue and expenses on the left side, and then by department, the top section there. So you can see overall, a bit of deficits in some of the ECS, the grades 1 to 12, operations and maintenance, transportation as a surplus. Overall, just shows where that 163,000 deficit, where that broken out in between the types of departments. So nothing too big on changes over year on that stuff. So pretty consistent as far as, like, say, salaries, wages, services and contracts can swing decent amount each year, but overall fairly consistent with prior. Schedule 4, so this is a schedule of operations and maintenance. So that total number, if you look at the far side section, the 5.5 million total, that just ties into the previous page for the total expenses. This one just breaks it out by more. It'll show specifically electricity, sewer, water, which just kind of gives a more breakdown of what is made up of O&M costs overall. Page 15, so schedule. And this is just a further breakdown for cash and where cash is made up of and what it's broken down to. So you got investments and a bunch of GICs and we show more. All of it is cash and cash equivalents. So the 4.9 million is all fairly liquid on that end. So nothing for too much information. The next page is just blank with more information if it was there. Page 17, so schedule 6. This is the schedule of tangible capital assets. So this is a good one. Everyone's curious to see where $35 million is. What type of assets is that made up of, right? So you have your land, work in progress, buildings, equipment, vehicles, computer hardware. So there's a lot of different categories in there. And then you can see the top half is your cost. So it shows the opening plus any additions, less any disposals. And then the bottom second half is your accumulated depreciation. So opening balance with the current year depreciation of 2.4 million. And then whatever cleanup for write-offs, disposals, everything like that. So just a further breakdown of that 5 million, obviously mostly made up of improvements. Next one, schedule 7. This is just the schedule of remuneration and monetary incentives. So most people are familiar from before, shows the salary remuneration for the board. And then down below it has your superintendents, treasurers, those director positions. It just kind of breaks that out into more detail and then shows your FTEs for certified, non-certified, all that information there. So also just information purposes that tie into this operations numbers. Schedule 8. So schedule of asset retirement obligations. So this one we mentioned previously where that number came from. This just is kind of a table of when the current year change, if there were any. So you can see there's nothing for the liability or the cost. It's just the current depreciation of 150,000. That's got a liability and an asset, and the asset gets depreciated over time. It's the only change in that one. Schedule 9. So these next two schedules are the unaudited schedules that I mentioned previously. So this one, usually always good information purposes. We can get some questions from these ones. This one is the unaudited schedule of fees. So it shows various things like construction, technology, activity, things like that. So overall, just more information purposes on some expenditures for fees on that end. That one, like I say, more details, obviously with administration would know those information specifically, but they do tie into the total numbers. It's just a presentation of where those all kind of go. Page 21, so schedule 10. This is the unaudited schedule of system administration. So just showing again certain breaking out expenses overall that ties into that 2 million for system administration. It shows like it's the office of superintendent, business admin, technology, things like that. So just another further breakdown of those costs for sysadmin there. Next one, so notes to the financial statement. So this is just supplementary information that provides more details to what's on. So I won't go through this in detail and put everyone to sleep. A lot of accounting policies, how things are accounted for the school division. So if there were anything changing from prior year, I would bring it to your attention here. These ones are, like I say, more for information purposes. Keep flipping through there. If we get to even page 27 is not a bad one. If anyone is curious, it shows the depreciation rates for the capital assets. So it'll show what your buildings are depreciated at, computer, office equipment, stuff. So good information there. But if we keep flipping through all the way to page 30. So page 30 is where we get into more information on more supplemental information for those notes that we mentioned before on the financial position. So not a whole lot of note 3, cash and cash equivalents, just shows that cash balance. Next page, here's a good one. So it's got your accounts receivable. So that 269,000 we mentioned. What is that made up of? Some of it's CMR, Some of it's federal government, First Nation, so just a more breakdown of that. Note 5 just talks about the equity in the ARMIC, Alberta Risk Management Insurance the Consortium. It just mentions what the value is at year end and what it was prior year, so just more information, details on that stuff. Page 32, so this one is note 6. Just shows more information on the accounts payable, 780,000. What is that made up of? Some of it's the weighted moving average adjustment, and then various accrued vacation, various payables on there. Nothing too significant of a change from last year. The benefit plan, so this kind of just talks more about local authorities pension plan details, rates, contributions for the year. Also mentions that employee future benefits that we talked about earlier, the $10,000. Next page, note 8, the asset retirement obligation. So more information on where that was derived from, kind of the history of how it works, how the number was determined. So just for more information purposes. Page 34, so this one starts with note 9, the prepaid expenses. Just shows you a bigger breakdown, that's 759,000. I was saying before, a lot of it prepaid insurance, software solutions, various amounts that were paid that relate to, part of it is related to subsequent year. So just more information on that. Note 10 is other non-financial assets. So this is your inventory values at year end, broken down by facilities and transportation. Note 11, so this one is the net asset note that we talked about previously of $15.3 million. Just shows it in a bit broken down form. The second box down there just kind of shows your accumulated from operations less the SGF. Get into the school generated funds table later on a little bit here. So that's just kind of more information on that. Contingent liabilities just mentions Division's a member of the ARMIC insurance. Just talks about the jurisdiction's share of the pool is 720,000 at year end. So information on that. Other revenue, the last note there, note 13. So this one just shows that 150,000 on the statement of operations. What is that made up of? Mostly rental facilities and then some gains on disposal of that the year. So we sold a few assets and most of them were depreciated fully. So that's just your net gain, the disposal of that. So. Note 14, so page 36. So this is school generated funds. This one just shows the beginning balance and then gross receipts of what was received in the year, less your expenses. So it just shows where that 287,000 of left remaining in SGFs at the end of the year. So I know always a good one for information purposes, but shows the breakdown on that. Note 15 is the related party transactions. So this one, obviously, the government of Alberta for education is the main related party. It's basically everything for revenue, so it just kind of shows more information, more of an Alberta Ed requirement on that end. Dollar amounts. And the last page here is just talks about economic dependence on a third party, Alberta Education, obviously, when the budget was approved and any comparative figures reclassifying notes. So that's essentially the financial statements in a nutshell. I know. Hopefully I didn't lose everybody too soon. A lot of information and trying to at least hopefully explain it. Obviously, the board's role is not to know every nitty gritty detail of it, but it's kind of know the big picture and governance wise of how it all involves that stuff. So it's a lot of information for sure.
Give me an understanding of contingent liabilities for ARMIC.
Yes, so
That our share of the pool is 720. What does that mean? Like, is that?
If it were to dissolve or.
yeah, like essentially it's a note that's been on there for a while and it's your equity in that consortium, right? So that's recognized as the asset. The liability were, to be if something happened, you would be liable. It's not necessarily like there's no dollar amount on the statement of any liability.
Okay.
It's more just a potential.
Part of insurance?
Part of insurance if things were changed with that. So no dollar amount being recognized, just the equity that's thrown in there. Side, but just a note that's lingered in there for forever for me. Any other questions, concerns? We can go to the next document, the report to the board of trustees. So our 2025 audit findings. So again, this one, a pretty template driven document. It has really good information, tells you kind of more about our audit process, the things that we look at. So I'll kind of go through it in not too great a detail, but enough to give you guys information. So the first page, just our formal letter to the board. We first just want to also thank Darla and the rest of the finance team for all the work they do. We come in here for a week and we're rummaging through, we used to rummage through things, now we're going through digital records, so.
Yeah.
But we're still walking here all week long and asking a lot of questions and talking to the rest of the staff for finance, so. It's a lot of big undertaking. As you can see, these statements are 40 pages. It's a lot of work to get done, so we really appreciate their cooperation and they're always really good to deal with, so. Like I say, it helps with the continuity and people being the same over years, so we really appreciate that and always have a good time when we're here, so. It always goes by too fast, but the rest of the staff always come ask us, I don't know how you can stare at your computer all day.
Yeah.
They're always shocked that we do what we do, but I enjoy it, and this is kind of the final puzzle piece for us, is for myself, is putting together this and reconciling that, because you always run into something. There's always something new every year, and that's kind of our end goal. So for us, we enjoy the numbers. Not everybody else feels the same way. So, no, we really appreciate, like I say, everyone here that we've always worked with has been really awesome. So I always feel comfortable and it's a great place to come work. So always appreciate that.
It's very nice, thank you.
I always just want to express our appreciation for that. And then that we're prepared to release our report today pending the board's approval. The next page, table of contents. So we'll get into the first part. So it just talks about our engagement status. We've completed our audit pending the board's approval. We've gotten our legal confirmations from the lawyers with anything on there. The independent auditor's report dated today. We go to page 2. So this is the significant audit, accounting and reporting matters. So here's where we would identify if there was any big issues that we had, changes from the audit service plan that we communicated to everyone previously. So there were no deviations from the audit service plan that was provided to you back in September. No significant limitations were placed on the scope or timing of the audit. No inherent limitations. So the inherent limitations on fraud. So we're not performing a fraud audit where we're examining if there was fraud. We're doing a financial statement audit, but we are still, as part of our jobs, have to be aware of where fraud can occur, looking at risks and things like that. Things like expense claims, visas, stuff like that, that back in the day, SGFs was a big one because there was cash involved. So that was where things could be happening with fraud, but sometimes you're only as good as your staff and the controls you have, right? So us as auditors, we're doing things on a sample basis, so we may not catch everything, right? We're looking at it on a sample basis and finding it, but we're having discussions, documenting things, so we're not looking for fraud, but we are aware of it. So we didn't find anything in the course of the audit that we discovered. We talked with multiple people, we corroborate information. I have discussions with a member of the board as well, so everything is very transparent, and we've never had issues in the past here that I've ever seen in my time. So controls have always been really strong here. Identified or suspected non-compliance, no non-compliance with any laws or regulations. No significant matters arose with what it was related parties. Next page, significant deficiencies in internal controls. So here's where we would kind of identify if there were some weak points, where we highlighted here and need for improvement. So nothing on that end for the controls that we've been testing. And obviously payroll, the biggest one, that's your biggest expense. So that's always been signed off, approvals are there. So that's always a good feeling for the audit for sure. Matters arising from discussion with management, no significant matters to identify. Significant differences, so these would be things like if we found errors and we didn't adjust them. So if we found an error and we would have to then say, like, this error occurred here, we would have to extrapolate it over the whole population. We didn't find any errors through the course of our testing, so nothing on our summary of differences for this year. So that's always a good thing for sure. Final materiality. So materiality, this kind of gives a good blurb about what materiality is. Essentially, it's users make a different decision if this was an error. I know that's a big number. There's $2 million. That's calculated on 4% of gross revenue for the organization, and that's pretty standard. But for us, if we were to find an error that size, it would just be adjusted as part of the statements. And if it was trivial, say it was less than 5% of that, it would be summarized in that summary of differences if we were to find anything. So I know everyone, that number is a hang up. It also factors into our testing. So it is also a component of that. But it's not that we found an error of 1.8 million adjusted, right? So typically if it's something really big, it will get adjusted as part of the statement. So some people just kind of gasp at that. It gets, obviously we'd make a different decision if we found an error that size, and that's not necessarily the case about all. So yeah, a lot of it is factored into our testing. And that number stays pretty consistent. That's why you typically use a base that's a consistent reflection of your organization. So revenue stays fairly consistent over the years. So the typical range is 3 to 5% of gross revenue. So that's where that number comes from. The asset retirement obligation estimate. So this one we talked about before, just making sure that there's a process in place to identify if there were any changes for any of these buildings. For the most part, infrastructure would be involved. Karen mentioned modernization, things like that. You would be well aware of it at that time. So, but it's still just having those conversations and identifying maybe something was on there that was really small, like a shop or something like that, that got demolished in the year. So we would get rid of that, right? So just making sure we have those discussions. The next one, the negative operating reserves. So this is just a note that I mentioned before that some of those reserves have negative balances. So more just a cleanup thing on identifying, well, we have all these various like GL accounts. Some of them, we don't even know what they're for, right? So it's more previous regimes before even Darla in that role, like you can trace it back as far as you want to go. My advice is to take it as what should that number be now, right? You have this much in accumulated surplus. Don't worry about playing with what was it 20 years ago. Like you might as well just look at it as a whole and say, what should it be? And then make those adjustments from there. But that's always something we can provide more information on, work with the finance team to talk about. So if anyone's ever curious to help with that, we can always provide that for sure. Our view of the significant accounting practices. So here's where we kind of just identify the accounting policies used by the division are appropriate. Mention estimates. So the asset retirement obligation is obviously an estimate based on the amount per square meter. So, as well as amortization, those useful lives of the assets is always an estimate. But as long as it's consistently applied, that's always how those are treated. Other matters, management representations. We get that from management each year, no issue on that. The next page, auditor independence. So just kind of outlining that we confirm that we are independent of the school division. We have no relationships that would impede our independence. And if we did, we would lose it. Appendix A, so this is the M&P audit process. I won't go through it line by line, but just kind of give more information as to what we do while we're here and the type of things that we examine. So just more for information. Appendix B, the communication requirements. So this one is just outlines making sure that we're adhering to the Canadian auditing standards. So that far right column just identifies what section that is of the auditing standards. It just mentions during the course of the audit, we provide an audit service plan, inquiry during the course of the audit findings. So just talks about the communication as part of the audit process. The next page, just more information on that. Appendix C, this is a significant risk and response areas. So these are just various sections of the financial statements that we look at and the type of tests that we perform during the course of the audit. And the last page, so this is just our formal letter to the outlining our independence for Hyper Division, that we're not aware of any relationships as of September 1st, 2024 to today. So that is essentially it. Any questions?
I
Yes.
do have a question for you. I'm sure you're aware of Bill 13, the Real Property Governments Act. And do you anticipate anything we may have to do as this changes? Because obviously they're moving ownership away from school divisions. And we have some buildings that are on property that we have purchased as High Prairie School Division that are outside of the government school buildings. Are you anticipating anything or know of anything yet?
We're still in the prelim stages
Okay.
of that. So, but it is a good point for sure. Like we've definitely heard lots about it. And we, at least like, that's a good thing too, about MNP is we have all these resources throughout the province essentially, right? So what we're hearing in the other cities, the other centers. So we have lots of that coming through the pipe.
Okay.
And we have regular meetings with public sector audits or school divisions, municipalities. So all that information it's kind of at the tipping point on that stuff for now.
Okay.
So, but no, I'll be happy to explain it more next time kind of thing too. So there's always new changes, like you say, there's always stuff and you never know politically, sometimes it changes all the time, right? You never know what's going to end up factoring in, but that's definitely something that's on the radar for sure.
Okay, cool.
That's a good point.
Right on.
All my questions got answered.
Flooded everyone with too much information.
No, it wasn't.
Perfect.
We'll let Ted know you.
Yeah, if anyone has any questions in the future, like I say, it might not come to you right now and you might think about it. Like say, if you want to bring it up to Darla and then she can talk to me, or if she doesn't have the answer, be happy to like say, present. And even the big one for me is the reserves. Like that's something that I would look at in the future, just because you want more realistic
Have
numbers.
it written down.
But like I say, if you're ever looking for whether you want more, how to approach that. Me to come and help you guys with that for sure.
In terms of doing something like that, how does that work? Because there are some parts of our reserves that we can't just randomly move.
You have to get
permission from
ministerial approval and
minister
things like
and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so
Okay.
what I would recommend is kind of even starting from square one of like, here's what the numbers are in that one schedule. And then really looking at it in terms of what, does this make sense? Should this be nil? Move it over here. Then if you factor that in, like, it's usually from capital that you need the approval. So you can always look at that and then say, does this make sense? And if it does, well, then we'll request ministerial, right? But at least have that knowledge of, if we have capital reserves of 3 point some million, does that even make sense, right?
Yeah.
Broken out between transportation, O and M, system admin. Why, right?
Yeah.
Like, what are we doing with this? You're
What's
at the end of the
plan
day,
and-
let me say, you're just allocating in between previously built accumulated surplus. So you're not playing with revenue and expenses. You're not playing with your current year surplus. It's more just a term planning, what has happened over the years, right? And
Yeah.
why?
That historical.
Yeah, you
context.
have this accumulated surplus over decades, however long, start of the division. What the future plans of it, right? And you do a lot of that now with your capital planning, your operating planning, so it's stuff that you're already probably talking about. It's just more so cleaning up some of those negative ones where it's
Yeah.
like, why is that there, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And why did it become negative?
Yeah. And a lot of people, like a lot of places won't have the answer, they didn't, no idea. And that's fair because
It's
people
historical.
change, yeah, it's historical. so.
Yeah. Mhm.
People change, the roles change, and then there's all of a sudden become, one knows what it is.
Overall, it's not negative.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
overall, it's still
Internal.
internal more so.
All moving around.
And there's sometimes it's overcomplicated, right? Like some divisions have way too many accounts that have like, they'll have each one for a separate school, then they have something like. they'll
And that's what
together
we
it.
have.
So it makes it a little more complicated when you're doing all these entries.
Yeah.
So it's something that you could simplify or just clean up, but more so, like I say, more so a recommendation over time. Not to say there's anything wrong with that total number, like Darla said, right?
Yes.
The total's fine, but does it make sense, right?
We appreciate that.
Or is the total fine?
Yeah. Within each section, right?
Yeah.
For sure.
I think the last time we did that was leading up to building.
Building.
The other question that I had is little. We hear that the required number of adjustable entries at year end was pretty nil.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was nil.
So typically, yeah, we would have that if we were to adjust anything as part of those numbers, as part of what the course we did, that would be in this report and it would be a summary of what we did.
Yeah.
There might be a one-off type thing when we're in the field doing it, but we just get Darla to make the entry, but
Right.
typically that's very rare, so it's really clean, so you should be happy with that, like that's,
Really nice.
it's always a good sign where
Yeah.
it's efficient, we're not wasting time having to fix a bunch of things, so. Like I say, Darla's always willing to learn. If there's something that we need to change, she's all up, ready to go. So we appreciate that a lot. It makes our life easier. Sure.
Back, Darla. Very good.
Awesome.
I thank you too.
Karen, you're gonna have to take over. I have nothing. I have no computer, I have no nothing. I don't know what needs a motion. I know absolutely nothing.
Okay.
And I've tried to get it to work.
See today, so.
You want me to get back?
No, I'm gonna a whole new
We have a
computer.
question for Brandon. You would like to make a motion?
To approve the 2024-2025 audited financial statement as presented by representatives of MNP LLP.
And any questions, queries?
Right.
If not, I'll call a question. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me.
And we'll just break for signing, please. Brian has to take.
This one started. Oh, you went. Nice job.
About a 10-minute break, just for doing that.
Nice seeing you again.
Yes, excellent.
Take care.
We're back.
So much, back from our break, having just adopted the financial audit. We move on to point number 7, points to celebrate, so that's led by Kyle.
Right. Over the weekend, our Indigenous education team did a land-based learning event at Prairie River Junior High School. The team hosted a number of sessions, include traditional elk teachings and elk calling, dry meat making, elk meat processing, and canning teachings. We've installed extended stop arms on 2 more buses, on bus 213 in Ward 1, which is Don Lane Flair, and on bus 225 in Ward 2, High Prairie area. We want to remind our families and students that the deadline for applying for dual credit courses for semester 2 is Monday, December 1st. If you have any questions about dual credit opportunities, please reach out to your child's career coach. And lastly, the vertical farm and its vertical farm technician have been showcased on our social media with a significant response from the community. Our post on our vertical farm over 126,000 views, 3,000 reactions, 100 comments, and over 300 shares. Vertical Farm has since harvested its first crop for lettuce and delivered those to GP Foods, Children's Resource Council, the High Prairie High Prairie District Food Bank. Those are our points to celebrate for this.
Thank you, Kyle. Wonderful points. Does anybody have any questions of Kyle? Seeing none, do we need to accept this as information or there's no motion to be made on?
Let's see if it says motion on the vote. If it doesn't, then we're good. Yep.
Okay, so thank you. We'll move on then to 8.1, discussion item 8.1, preliminary AERR results.
So the AERR results were released late by Alberta Education. I think it was November 6th that they came out. So we were really behind our normal deadlines. However, some good news to celebrate within the AERR. I have put our summary that we use for your perusal. And as you can see, we have had gains across the division, across the different domains. So student learning, citizenship, we compare the division with the province. Some of the highlights, 3.9% increase in parental and student and teacher satisfaction with access to supports and services. We are looking at our goal is always to match the province, and as you can see, you're getting closer and closer with each subsequent year. If we go to page 2, our 3-year high school completion and our 5-year high school completion still look low with a lot of improvement, and certainly it's something that we are working on. We started addressing this as well in September. However, please keep in mind this is not last year's data. So it's always a year behind lagging the data. We anticipate where we're going to see some big gains in this this spring. That's because we've been working hard at upping our high school completion.
This isn't 24-25 data?
No, it's always based the
On
pre
24.
yeah. Every year it's that there's that lag.
Yeah.
Because we had a lot of gains with some of our high school, particularly Pratt. However, I'll be fine. It will be reflected in the spring's. Yeah. Last year's grads results and completion rates will be in this spring's data. So.
In here, we don't, I'm sorry, I'm just gonna interrupt for a second. We don't have the comparative year.
Oh, just wait.
Okay.
Just wait. Thank you. Thanks, Darla. So then if we turn to page 3, we break down our PETs and our DIPs by subject area. We then, the principals then drill down to their specific teachers. However, you can see how in all the subject areas that we are tested, how the division is doing in comparison to the province. So some notable standouts are our French language arts results in grade 9 and in grade 12. Far surpass the provincial averages for that. So it gives you an idea of where we're at. We have the standard of excellence and the standard of acceptable standard represented there. And so if we go to page 4, yeah, it's not year by year, Karen. It is, or Trustee Scholl, I apologize. It is from when I started as superintendent. Okay, so we see growth in all domains. What is really, we have been working with our principals on assessment. I'm really pleased with the gains that we've made in the PAT acceptable over 2 years. So that's an increase of almost 3% in 2 years on the PAT acceptable. Still certainly we have room to grow, and we will continue to do that. But this is just a high level summary. You will be receiving your AER results binders on Saturday. Principals have it due to us on Friday. We'll go one final look Friday during the day and then print so that they are ready for school reports to the board. So that is the snapshot of the division health academically overall, and with parental satisfactions, happily will take any questions.
Yes, thank you, Murray. Anybody have any questions with Murray?
Yes.
Mike.
So K&E math and science, does that mean we had no testing, or does that mean that there's no registration at all? Doesn't show up even as a 0.
Right, so if there's no data there, there would have been nobody registered.
Nobody registered or nobody tested?
For the exam, registered for the exam,
Okay.
yeah.
Thank you.
Is that everything? Okay, Steve?
Is it possible to get the 5-year trend when there are binders? I see you got 2, but is it possible to get a few more with it?
We in-house make these,
Right.
so we would have to go back and do the
We
5-year.
don't have the past numbers easily accessible.
We will make it, but it is not an Alberta ed.
I understand. I
Yeah,
was wondering how we were trending over the last few or
yeah,
something more than 2 years.
right.
Wasn't there the 5-year in the?
There's previous 3-year in
The AER.
in the AERR, we have 3-year, but this was the start of from when I became superintendent. That was just to demonstrate growth.
And then back that far, you're getting into COVID times where there was no.
Fair enough, yeah, the reliability of the data is not quite the same. Okay. Okay. You know, thank you.
Murray? Thank you so much for that information. We look forward to seeing the.
Saturday.
8.2 GPD modernization update. Well, again.
I think I'm gonna pass the buck on that one. Simply because last week we had the good fortune of meeting trustee Skripnik and trustee Scholl, and I met with the architects in Edmonton and well, trustee Skripnik, you'd like to start us off?
Putting me on the spot. No, yeah, we did. We met with the architects and things are looking very positive. And we were really looking forward to giving us plans, more concrete plans moving forward with the different scenarios to then bring to the board and have a look.
And I believe that's in the next couple months.
Couple months, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anything else to add?
I think it would be safe to say, and I don't think we would be spilling any secret. It does look like that there will have to be a full gym replacement at GPV.
As per their suggestion at this meeting, that's what they're looking at. Nothing's finalized, nothing's obviously been decided at any point. We're very preliminary, but that's where,
The current gym does not meet code.
yeah, in terms of the ceiling height.
Short.
Yeah. It's close.
Yeah.
And no cigar.
Oh, no cigar. Joy, you took some notes.
Yeah, I got some good notes. They
Yes.
designed our Juice Art School
Yes.
as well. So, you know, again, that's working again with our school division and again, and they know Butch very well.
Yeah.
And so they were really, you know, looking forward to that continuity, and GPV is a very well-kept school for as old it is. So, you know, that speaks volumes to our maintenance department, right? And all the
That's why we
people.
never got a new modernization this whole time.
Yeah, right, like that they were.
Double-edged sword.
That's what they said, yeah. So, but it's time to bring it up, to the 20th century. The gym was there, that was their words. Yeah. The gym, you know, they were still concerned about some height stuff, so they'll be bringing a couple different, designs. They're happy with the money to be able to work within that dollar amount. They're confident that they can do it, which was nice to hear, because we're unsure of what things are going to look like in the next year, and even in prices of, you know, when it comes down to hiring people and things, there's just not a lot of people, and the price in the north is a lot extravagant than it is in a city, and then to find people is also difficult in certain budget lines, right?
Balls and like
Yeah.
some surprises, so they figured that they'd be okay anyways.
Yeah, they're gonna improve on the drawings, redo some mechanical, some ventilation. The electrical panel still has the sticker on it from 1967.
Yeah.
It is the original sticker that they could find, so, but they were given some drawings, some old drawings that Butch had. So, you know, just those little tiny bits of pieces has been making it easier for them. They talked about parking in a different, just different capacity. And they're looking forward to, you know, working with the community, working with people. In the new year, we'll have some drawings and maybe some refurbishing of some different places. It's Rob and Kirk.
Robin.
Rob and Kirk, and so that was good. And again, they were happy with the budget that they were given, so they're hoping to be able to stick to that. Yeah, they were great to meet with, and they feel confident. They sounded very confident. They didn't seem like they were not knowing what they were doing. They'd come in and in a half an hour could take 4 pages of notes, and they didn't stop talking, and then we all had to go because everyone had 2 o'clock meetings somewhere else, and we got in at 1:30 to 2, so for half an hour they just and got her done. So I appreciate that, because
Very efficient, and they seem to be very confident, and as we know, we know their work from Juice Art School, architectural design, and so we look forward to the work that they're gonna show us. For anybody who's interested in knowing why GPV is in
Oh, yeah.
this at this point, I honestly don't know when it first came onto our capital plan, but it's been over 25 years, I think, eh?
Ever since I started.
Yeah.
I've been there. So,
and-
it was 24 years.
Yeah, the main 2 points that I can come up with just off the top of my head are to, of course, right size the school, which of course we, because of our dual track school, we're able to
Advocate for more space.
looking for more square footage based on the need for more track, which is amazing. And then, of course, George P. Vanier has been, because of its age, our least efficient of all of our school buildings, and so we're hoping to really reduce that non-efficiency.
Yeah.
And save some money down the line. So was there anything else to add to that?
doors and windows here, go widen up some stuff and
Doors.
put some windows and. She had all these great, yeah, just great quick little snippets there to give us, right? But nothing else but quick snippets, and then stay tuned. In the new year, we will get some plans and we'll have another meeting. So we were thankful for
The
that.
public will then be able to see the conception of.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's right at the very, very, very beginning stages here, but we're ready.
And we, one more point, I just want to thank our MLA in our area, Todd Lowen, for his advocacy and our education minister as well.
Absolutely.
Just really quickly, did they touch anything at all on the size of our, like our IA lab and that kind of stuff?
Good,
Because-
interesting.
Because historically, all of our old school buildings have a massive amount of space for our labs, and in the new builds that we've seen across the province, they're like matchbox size.
In our initial meetings with Alberta Ed, both Deputy Eckberg and myself have strongly advocated for the preservation of those spaces. And as the architects pointed out, they know, what would you call that? The West Wing? The West Wing of GP Vanier is sacrosanct. That was Rob's words, and he knows that they're not sacrificing space for those CTS labs.
Because those are really important to our students because they're finding their future careers there. They're not, it's not just making a small little project. It's, do I like woodworking? Do I like automotive mechanic?
Right.
It's more of a stepping stone into their future careers. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, hate to lose any space because it's being well utilized today. And that was early on in these conversations was advocated for, and I'm glad to hear that, yeah, that the message was received.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for that, and we will definitely keep everybody updated as we get the updates ourselves. On to 8.3, educational service agreement updates.
I just wanted to really highlight that I have successfully completed meetings with Capilino, Secretary Driftpile and Swan River Nations regarding our educational service agreements. I believe we had really productive first meetings. They were initial. Of course, this is going to unfold, and we haven't began to even talk about dollars and cents yet. And that's when the trustees will be brought in as well when we get to that point. However, that being said, it was initial contact and setting up the parameters of what our working group would look like. I really appreciated meeting with all the education directors and Cheryl Sheldon as well. It was a really nice process to go through. We were talking conceptually at this point, things like digital sovereignty, transfer of data back and forth between the nations and High Prairie School Division, how that will look, who will be responsible for what, and how we can enhance our reporting to our First Nations partners and come up with an education service agreement and plan that will suit everyone. So we are well under the way, and stay tuned for further updates.
Steve.
Typically, how long do these ESA terms?
Depends. A good window would be 5 years. Yeah. No. For me,
Just as a descriptor, to explain a little further, what you need to find what digital sovereignty means.
do you want to go? Oh, okay. Sorry. Digital sovereignty is, they are, to put it simply, it's their students, their data. But we are the school board, and they have a right to that data. And we typically don't provide the data, or historically, school boards have not provided the data that nations feel is enough. Let's put it that way. I won't say appropriate, but enough. So with digital sovereignty, we're looking at, once the data is collected, the ownership of that data then goes from the school division to the nation. We have a little bit of difficulty with that because we have PASI, which is our provincial system, and so we cannot allow our partners access to that. So we're looking at what can we generate, and then once that data is generated, the ownership of the data, and more importantly, how do we navigate if there were a data breach, security concerns, those sorts of things. So getting that all set up in our educational agreements. And also to, sorry, to add to that, another component then is we are now in the situation where we need reciprocal agreements. So because we have had High Prairie School Division students who have attended federal schools. Right, so we have to look at how that data can flow back and forth between the two school entities and make sure that security and all that is in place. So basically, digital sovereignty is data ownership and what's associated with that.
And Marie, are you saying that that was asked for, or that's like, how did this come up?
I get pretty much every meeting that we talked to, yeah. It came
And
up.
provincially as well.
And provincially, yeah, yeah.
Any other questions on ESAs? Seeing none, move on to the classroom complexity survey update.
Now I'm going to make Deputy Heckford.
Yeah, the classroom complexity survey is complete. So we have all of the asks of Alberta Ed. We've completed all of those surveys and they are off to Alberta Ed. And I guess now we wait, see. It's a plan. Does anybody have any questions? But what? Isn't there anything? Just see.
I have two questions. The first being, as you looked at this survey, because obviously they announced they landed a survey on us, there was an incredible time constraint on that. And I'm really thankful we're a small division, not biggest division with like 100 schools, because it was eat by every school. Can you tell me, do you feel like the way they framed the questions and the data they gathered, is that going to guide us well, or guide government well in how they make decisions? Like, is the survey
Did it live up to its intent?
yeah, does it hold the integrity to gather the information we need?
I believe the questions that were asked were appropriate. I think they asked a lot about what the school population is and the ratio of kids with not only specific needs with criteria, but also those complexities that go beyond, you know, needs with criteria. Sometimes we know that we are allocating resources in schools even though we are not necessarily funded for them. You know, when a kid has an individual plan, that doesn't necessarily mean that there's a code associated with it. And so they're looking at those complexities and they asked to report on those. And so we did that. How they get that, how they dissect that information afterwards, I'm hoping that they reach out and ask some questions. There was a lot of room for notes to put addendum notes in there. But as far as ratios of teacher to support to, you know, what are the complexities we're seeing? They had spots for, you know, are there incidents of note that happen in schools that we have to respond to? So there is room for that as well. So yeah, I think the questions were appropriate. I hope that the information is gathered and interpreted properly, because the survey was put out so quickly, and I think there will be discrepancies throughout the province as to how it's filled out.
Yes.
They did have some tutorials, and if you attended them, I think you have a good idea of how to put the data in, but even after that, I'm not sure that schools are so contextually different and divisions are contextually different, and I'm hoping that they can find some consistency across the board.
It would be fair to say our principals had confusion.
Yeah,
And we had to support and help them through that.
you bet.
My other question was specific, like, cause I had an opportunity through another way to see what that looked like. And they were asking by grade, by class often. And so how, let's say, for example, let's say in a junior high where a class might have a science and a social teacher, and then a homeroom that does language and something else. How was there a way to define, like, say, a singular kid that has 3 or 4 different classes or separate teachers on how to count that kind of stuff? Like, was that well laid out so we don't double up on the data because there's this class and the same kid is complex in all of them?
Right. They asked that we put in individual classes, so that's what we did. And I understand why they do that. And the numbers at the end, we're not representative of the total number of students that we have, but they are probably representative of the ratio. So if a kid goes into math and you need an EA in that room for kids in math, okay. And then they go into Z and but they don't have an EA. So it might be the same cohort of kids, but the supports in each of those classes are different.
Yeah.
Also, you might have a cohort of grade 7s that take, LA and math and science together, but then they go into options. And so now that class is bigger and different, right? So every time that there is a different either cohort or class with, different supports, they ask you to create a separate class for that.
Makes sense.
Yeah, Steve?
So just so I can wrap my head around it, what do we have for, like, are they taking the overall for a division and looking at it that way? Because our classroom is different and the complexities are different from GP Vanier to CJ Schurter.
It's for each individual school.
So and that's broken down by
By the school.
By that.
Every school had to do that survey.
Okay.
Every school.
Yeah.
So if you have every class.
If you have 3 kindergartens each, they're each in their individual class.
In each individual school.
Yeah.
And there was no way to summarize that as somewhere in there to pull it all together for a division, or it's just.
I would have to do that. I downloaded.
You would have to, there's not a tool that at the end added up everything.
It's not what they asked for.
That's my
Yeah, that's
concern.
what they
that
asked
they have to do that.
Yeah.
Well, I don't want them to do that either, but overall, how are they gonna identify where to? Are they gonna allocate funding to a school rather than a school division? You know what I mean? Like,
That remains to be seen, and we don't know their
we don't-
full intentions with this data yet, so.
We
talked about those points.
Yeah.
So wherever the need is greatest is what they kind of alluded to.
They also asked for divisional supports, and we were quite cognizant not to double up on those. So we put those in one area. And, if we have an Indigenous education coach that goes to 3 different schools, then we were sure to say, in this school, they have a 0.3. In this school, they have.
Yes, okay.
So, good, try to express that data that way.
Did you have a question, Lee?
I do. Who filled out the surveys? All our principals in all of our schools?
Yeah.
In this short amount of time in November?
Yep.
Okay, so hats off to those people.
Absolutely.
We worked really hard.
Yeah, they did work really hard, and there's been a lot of things that have come down the pipe here lately, just coming back into school in November. There's a lot of things asked of them, a short turnaround time. We have AER, we have reports to the boards. I don't know what other divisions look like. I'm not worried about them, I'm worried about us. So thank you to our principals for that diligent and, all the staff, report cards, like
All that
it's
stuff.
all happened in this 1 month of time and with the fall break.
Yeah.
So in 3 weeks, it has a lot of work has been done in our school division coming back. And for that, I am thankful to the staff that are in our schools for this quick turnaround work. Some of those things are out of our control. And I know sometimes it's easy and they're looking for a place to throw fire at because there's been a lot. And I'm just really thankful that they have this done. And now I look forward to what the government does with this data and comes back to us for our division in the province. So yeah, that was it.
Thank you, Joy, for saying that. Steve?
One more quick one, just to understand it. Did we have, is English as a second language brought into this
Yeah.
as well?
They have a
So
category.
that was, oh, okay, I was skimming through the beginning and I didn't see it, so, okay, awesome, thank you.
So it'll list down like you have English and second language, but will it break down like 0 words of English, like all of that? We have.
No. EL, the English as a second language or additional language, they call it now in AL. They just say you are or you aren't. Right? You have and there's a specific criteria that students have to meet to be as such. And then there's benchmarks that are done every year for that student to see where they are in that process.
Thank you.
Very, very exciting excited for, I am very excited. I have to find my words this morning because that is really heavy. To see what does come. Yeah, from this, down from Alberta Education. In what way does this relate, could this relate to what we have supplied to Alberta Education? This aggression and complexity in schools action team final report.
I think that the coding system that we have right now for inclusion is not representative of all the complexities and the severity of those complexities right now. And so I think that was the ask. I think it's what are we missing? What is actually happening in schools? You know, is this task force that they've created going to address what isn't currently addressed in our funding models today?
Okay, okay, wonderful. So we'll have some more, just a little bit more localized detail. for them
Yeah.
to-
I think the government is hearing that, you know, the circumstances in schools is difficult. We're not being funded properly. Okay, so how do we allocate funds then? I think that's where.
Okay, I appreciate that perspective. Thank you. All right, any other questions on 8.4? None, we'll move on to GST fund to school boards. I believe we have a agenda.
Yeah, just in working with the MD in the Smoky River for many, many years. I do the GST return for the MD and notice that we get 100% back GST what we paid out. And then on the recreation side of it, we used to get 50%, now we get 100 as well. But school boards only get 68% back. And I don't know, I brought it up as maybe an advocacy position. And we did bring it up with Todd Lowen when we met with him. And he had never heard of it. So I asked him whether or not we should advocate provincially or advocate federally. And then I did look it up to see, okay, why is this? And it's very complicated to find out why we're only given 68% back to the GST. It's, I guess, written in the tax act federally. But Todd Lowen, our MLA, did say that he would take it back to see provincially, you know, is it through the province or is it through the Canadian government that we should advocate? So it's just
I
just don't understand why.
And there's, in any research that you did, that I did as well, there is no explanation as to why.
Right.
It's sort of, this is what way it is. And so it would be nice to even to have an explanation, and if there isn't one, then
Right.
let's rectify this, right? So.
Well, thank you.
Very good. Yeah, thanks for that.
So,
Go ahead.
go ahead, Marie.
So to understand, you've been advised by Mr. Lowen to start provincially.
He never said that. He said he would take it back.
Okay.
Just to see on how that advocacy would go.
So
Would the province advocate to the federal government or?
I think activists and maybe add it to the advocacy committees.
Right.
Yeah. For discussion and advertising. Yeah, I think that would help us.
Okay.
All school boards tremendously.
Yeah, I think so.
Thank you.
So thank you, Lynn, for bringing that up. Do you have comments or questions on that?
You darling for our attention.
No,
It was lit. I didn't know that the MD got 100% back.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah, it's just weird.
It's
It's just what, like, why?
There's just nothing. And
Yeah.
so we'll find out through this. And so, yeah, I look forward to seeing what he comes up with. That, have a copy.
No, it's okay.
Right, we're good to move on from there.
Mhm.
8.6 advocacy planning. Well, look at that. How well it's like inside. Who brought that up? Advocacy planning? Joy, go ahead.
We need to set a meeting date. And because we had talked about this GST, like when we're in the city, and then we had our advocacy plans, but we thought maybe we should get on now because we're in a new school year and we've got this board. We should probably set a date sooner than later to kind of have an advocacy meeting and start getting on this GST and things, just because so many calendars are so busy. So would we just, do it over Zoom like we did sometimes in the evening, those kind of things. I just wanted to make sure we didn't lose momentum as we're going along here right now. Things like the vertical farm, things like collegiate school, like they take a while, right? So I thought, oh, this is prime time. After we talk about GST, let's set a date for the advocacy meeting.
Should we do that right away?
No, we can do like after the meeting or whatever. I just didn't want us to lose focus.
Yep.
So for me, I'm like, if I don't put it on the agenda, it'll go on that sticky note. And then I'll find that sticky note in 2 months, stuck between another piece of paper, and then I'll be like, that was
We'll
me.
have missed 2 months of
And
that.
we'll be missed 2 months of advocacy.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so just if after this meeting, we could plan as the advocacy committee, just to get ready and have a meeting and bring anything forward, and then we'll bring it back to the board.
Advocacy committee members are, someone please, I think I am on this year.
I think I am too.
Enjoy your
Me.
show, I
Yeah.
think. Anyone else on there?
Was Lori still? I forget.
We'll look at her.
We
notes.
have that paper, yeah, we'll have that paper, so we'll get her done at the end of this, and then we'll plan it, and then we can bring something back to the board when we get on that. Okay.
So bring this up. Maybe do that after the meeting is done. 8.7 Fairview College Campus, I believe Tammy brought that.
I did. Obviously, we've heard in the news in the last couple of weeks that Northwest Polytech has made the decision to close the Fairview campus. The Fairview campus in the town of Fairview is one of the major employers. It has provided post-secondary education opportunities in that community, I believe, for over approximately 70 years. There was no notice to the community, there was no notice to the elected officials within those communities, and there was not even any notice to the staff or the students that was going to be happening until it dropped in the news. Within that campus itself, the company of Billing has offered their apprenticeship and education courses for all of Alberta. And it was the only campus in all of Canada to offer Harley Davidson repair certification. It is a massive loss to Northern Alberta for that campus to have been arbitrarily closed. I'm wondering if our board is willing to write letters of support and also to perhaps maybe explore what kind of conversations we need to have with perhaps Northwest Polytech, as well as perhaps Northern Lakes College, about what we need to do to ensure that place stays open. It has served a massive number of our students over the years, and another loss of post-secondary opportunities out of the northwest corner of this province is going to significantly affect our students' opportunities to move into post-secondary and not have to leave and go Edmonton South. And so I'm hoping we can, perhaps as part of the city committee, maybe even talk about who and what kind of strategies we need to build in order to support and hopefully retain that campus, whether it stays under the Polytechnic whether it moves to a collegiate model or any number of other things, but it's a pretty drastic hit for that community and also for all of that's here in this corner of the province. So
Very important. It's been very important historically to our, especially our post-secondary students looking for trade advancement.
Yeah.
And so anybody else around the table that wants to comment or ask questions of Tammy? Michael?
I'm not sure if it's a question of Tammy, but I'm just curious how it will affect our green certificates for our students that run through that college. Like,
$1 million question.
Yeah, we have to look in, I can't answer that right now. Yeah.
Good question.
From what I heard, I'm under the understanding that there is zero willingness to absorb some of the courses that were offered in Fairview into the Polytechnic in Grand Prairie. And so essentially it just means a complete down the ball of that, so.
I would hate to operate on assumptions or what we've been
Yeah.
hearing, so I'm looking forward to getting some of those details from the powers that be.
Then would this be something that we would bring up to our zone, SBA zone 1? Have a discussion with all of the school boards in this area, in the zone.
I think that would be very appropriate. Of us to bring it up if no one else does. I'm assuming it will be brought up at the next meeting.
That's a good idea too, yeah.
The agenda will be drawn up, I believe, on Monday, so I'll make sure to. Bring it up, yeah. Slim. Anyone else? So Tammy's asking for, I believe you asked for, well, whether or not we want to send letters of support.
And I guess maybe before we do that, maybe advocacy can dig a little bit more to find out how it might impact our green certificates. But I do believe that we as a board have to come out publicly in support of a facility that our students have used over the years. Like there's a ton of people that I know and kids that I know that have graduated out of there, going back far earlier than me even. When I graduated, when Michael and I graduated. Right.
That was a long, long time ago.
It was. I know.
Wait a minute.
Even just their
but we did it in
program
3 years.
for exposure to trades. That was pretty tremendous too, where they could go and experience multiple trades, like all within a week, I believe. Something like that. So yeah, that's a big loss.
Did Grand Prairie Polytechnic give reason?
It's financial. It's financial.
Which is everyone's reason to say no to everything.
They also host our zone skills competition. That's right.
Yes, that's right.
And because there's no trades or very few trades in the Grand Prairie campus. Yeah. Boy, I don't know what that looks like.
Okay, well, we will bring it forward to the zone as requested by Lynn. We'll bring it forward to the advocacy committee for discussion. And following that, we'll bring it back to the board for the motions in regards to letters of support or
Will administration do how it impacts us? Report on that, or how is that handled?
In advocacy,
I think through
Within
it.
advocacy?
Yeah, I think so.
We'll
Dig into that data and bring it back as a report. Is that sufficient?
Thank you.
Thank you for bringing that up. Action items 9.1 was the audited financial statements, which of course we went over with Brandon. So those were just attached to the agenda for reference. So 10 reports, 10.1 superintendent report. That is attached.
No, we need to,
Yeah, we need to-
9.1, we gotta accept all.
Oh, yeah, duh. Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Thank you for that. On it.
I'll make that motion.
All right, so yes, as Brandon, all the details. Motion, Lynn,
To approve the 2024-2025 audited financial statement as presented by reference
the representative of MNP LLP.
Did we do that one out of turn and I made that motion at the beginning
Yeah, you did.
before we had discussion?
Yeah.
I was out of order. Sorry, guys.
It's okay, we will.
We're again.
Accept it first.
Yeah.
We'll really like
Yeah.
to strike one.
Yeah.
Make sure that we get it in.
Have discussion around it as a board at that time. I apologize.
That's okay. Thank you for recognizing that. Any comments, questions, queries of the audited financial statements?
Well, once again, Darla, hats off to you and your team. You know, as he stated, Brandon stated publicly, working with you guys is wonderful to be able to work here. And so that you know, that speaks volumes to you and your leadership and your team that work with you, the willingness to give the numbers, give the papers, you have nothing to hide. And the fact that there was zero adjustments too is, you know, it's something to be proud of. We don't take a $50 million budget lightly. If we did, we'd probably have a lot more things that we'd be saying yes to, a lot more things and spending money where we shouldn't be spending money. So thank you again for that. I enjoy MNP like LNP. They do a good job. They talk to us in English. They're very willing to answer any questions, and they're very willing to answer questions anytime outside of here and throughout the year. And for that, I really appreciate that, because sometimes we come up with, we didn't think about that right now, or we go back, or we want to spend a whole bunch of money or put a whole bunch of money somewhere, and we're like, should we, could we? And they just are so willing to help, and you guys work so well with them that it's a simple pick up the phone, have a conversation, boom, we have an answer right back. And it just, you know, it helps our board be able to function properly and at a constant pace. So yeah, I'm really thankful for that. I appreciate it.
Steve?
Couple comments within there too. I noticed like coming into this in October, it's a little late to review financials and totally understand it. Going through it, I recognize some of the challenges that I wasn't aware you guys were facing as far as the $1.1 million decrease from the government of Alberta in funding. I thought was significant. Your increase in ECS instruction costs that you've had to deal with. You guys reading through that was good. Your financials at the end were good. As far as process goes, how do we ensure that we tackle and this comes back to the board as far as the asset retirement obligation and dealing with that, and the negative operating reserves and having that allocated properly? What's that process?
The negative operating reserves, overall, it's not negative, it's.
Yes, I understand that.
Each
Sorry.
department, so Murray and I will sit down and transfer that from the surplus.
And does that have to come before the board since it's restricted, or does it just?
It's not restricted though.
I thought those were under the
This
restricted
is
one.
unrestricted surplus. No,
Under the operating?
it's unrestricted.
It's only if you're moving money
From capital.
from capital to operate.
That's ministerial.
Real approval,
Yeah, I didn't say that. I meant the board.
but this is unrestricted reserves.
Yeah. Unrestricted
Okay, then I
to operating.
read that one. Okay, thank you. So then when the process then for, so you guys will just do that, we won't know about it, except in the next audited financials, it'll look better. kind of thing?
We can let you know.
Trustee items with
Yeah.
our fiduciary meetings, our budget meetings, our strategic plan meetings.
Just trying to understand. the
Yeah,
process.
yeah, we,
And then as far as the asset retirement, that comes through the same meetings?
Asset retirement obligation is
Yeah.
a brand new, is a couple years old, difference in Canadian accounting.
Under the, yeah.
Yeah, and so they reviewed our all of our capital assets.
And we
Yes, yeah.
done that with the percentage thing rather than actually doing it.
No, it wasn't a percentage. The percentages now, no, she gave him real data as to when you get rid of like actual, because you had actuals.
We had actuals from the Art School.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
which he then used to go by square foot or square
Correct.
meter across.
Yeah.
But then in his findings, he was saying to change how we do this going forward, right?
Nope.
Well, what was it under his findings? On the last page of the summary.
Look at it.
Sorry. Quick notes as he was talking.
Which document were you looking at?
You listed it in the audit finding.
What page?
Oh,
Page three?
Find here.
I think it was on page 3, I believe.
The asset retirement obligation, we recommend that the division implements a formal process to follow annual for estimate of asset retirement obligation.
Okay.
And this is what they do. The auditors?
So that's our annual
So
process.
That's only if
That's-
you,
Our formal process is to have the auditors do it.
Here.
Perfect, thank you. No, I'm good. Bye.
Anyone else? Seeing no more questions, I will call the question to Lynn's motion. All in favor? Thank you, that's carried. Now we go on to reports. 10.1 Superintendent's Report. To our agenda, any motion.
Little skinnier, oh,
Need
sorry.
a motion to receive superintendent's report as information. Nicole,
I'll make the motion to receive the superintendent's report as information.
you. Any comments or questions on the report, Tammy? Any comments or questions on the report, Tammy?
You had a meeting with Alberta Ed Mental Health Team about the mental health grant, and that's the one that we had for 2 years, right? Jesse was spearheading that at one point in time.
Yeah.
What, if anything, has happened to that? Did we spend all our money? Were we able to keep any allocation?
Sure did.
It's like, did the government find value in what we were doing to allow us to?
Well, the great thing that Alberta Ed did with that grant was that they allowed through discussion to reallocate it to different priorities. And so what we started out with our proposal was great. And then, of course, you know, somebody decided to have a baby. So then it morphed into other things, and they actually allowed us to spend some of that money on one-on-one support, hiring contracted services, things like that. So we were absolutely able to spend that money on mental health for our kids.
Okay, yeah. And the only other question I had is somewhere at some point in time, we started talking deeply about attendance, and obviously we had a 3-week-long strike, but we kicked off our attendance structure in September.
Yeah.
We're back. Initial blushes because of course we had that 3-week interruption, but how is that playing out in our schools and how have schools picked up on that? Are
Well,
they
lucky we
struggling?
Had a meeting with the attendance officer yesterday. I can confidently say, I feel that we are ahead more than we've ever been because 2 key things have happened this year with attendance. Number one, the students that were problematic for attendance last year, principals picked up those students immediately at the start of the school year. Phone calls to families were made, connecting that bridge between home and school. Because as we know, if we wait, the chances of recidivism go through the roof. So right away, these students started in September and they knew, oh, people are watching and people are concerned and they're worried about us. And so that was good. That was number one. And number two is we have a whole defined process this year based on percentages with certain thresholds, and then the letters go home, the meetings happen. If that's unsuccessful, then it goes to the attendance officer. The attendance officer will try, and if that doesn't produce the results we need, then it's referred to OSAR. And that is the, for those who don't know, that's the Office of Student Attendance of Records. So Yeah, so it is a much cleaner process. Principals have been trained on it. That was part of their startup in August, and we have uniformly a clear process all across the division.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Tammy, any other questions of the superintendent's report?
A lot happened despite labor action.
I actually have a question in regards to labor action, how, it's not directly tied to report.
Right.
How was the transition back in overall?
I have to say, without hesitation, I am so proud of our staff. It was like we never missed a beat. And as everyone knows, those first 3 days back, I wanted a little bit of caution, and because you have to pay attention to how your workforce is feeling. And it was to be fair, it was a contentious return to no fault of our teachers, and I thought we were going to need some time to readjust and support people. Not the case. Our teachers came back chomping at the bit. They wanted ECA right away. They wanted this right. I can say that I have not heard from any of the principals any issues or concerns regarding reentry and regarding the collective or the legislation back to work. I think it's a testimony to the professionalism of our teachers.
I couldn't agree more, and I'm very happy to hear it. Not because of it, but related to that, we have not made any calendar changes.
Right.
And we don't, as far as the transition goes, again, we don't see the need to change anything.
That's a very good question, Trustee Scholl. And I want to remind everyone that the minister was very clear that that student outcomes is what is the priority. So teachers are their own islands in the sense that they determine how those outcomes are best taught, demonstrated, and met. So instead of, and I'm going to be oversimplifying here, instead of doing 5 examples, you might do 3 and you might have a discussion on, or it's up to the professionalism of the teacher. And because diploma exams were canceled, then we only have to focus on outcomes, which means also too, with diplomas canceled, our senior high exam week will automatically become instructional time.
Right. Fair.
Right? So we no longer have that week of downtime or longer or more.
Student awarded marks or school awarded marks, sorry, or 2 weeks before.
Yeah, they're quite early.
Yeah.
So I'm confident that we will.
It gives us like 3 weeks for sure of instructional time.
Yes, yeah.
Especially for those.
And we've all seen the email that we were asked to consider. We were asked to consider carefully if we were to do calendar changes, because it may have implications on collective agreements or across the right. So we do not have to worry about that. So
I know for myself, one of the concerns that came across to me was less so for the grade 12 students, knowing that there are no diploma exams for this semester, but more so for the younger grades in terms of building those foundational learning blocks. And we don't want them to miss too many hours of instruction so that they miss some of those really foundational basics. So, but that's very interesting. It's something I hadn't really considered, having that extra instructional time instead of
at the back end. Yeah.
So thank you. So at this time, we don't see any need to make any calendar changes. Okay. Tammy?
One other quick question, just in reading through the report, 57 students in dual credit programming. Are any of them at risk of not being able to complete because they were away from dual credit for 3 weeks? Are they going to have?
I don't like to single people out, but I'll happily do this for Monica. Monica, during the labor disruption, worked very hard with our post-secondary partners. So when students came back that first day, we already had recovery plans in place for the students. She had reached out to all the institutions, every institution that we partner with, and a plan was drawn up and how that there would be no loss. So all due to her hard work. Yeah.
Very much appreciated.
Yeah.
Monica, for that. All right, any more questions of the superintendent's report? Seeing none, we'll call the question. All in favor? And that's carried. To finance reports. I will be.
Approve the accounts payable, accounts receivable, check, EFT register, school generated funds, visa and budget reports as presented in the closed session.
Thank you for that. Any comments, or questions of either financial report? These, of course, were reviewed in detail in our closed meeting earlier today as well. And so, Lynn, yes,
Just one quick question. So far, I mean, it hasn't been very long. Any surprises, anything that, you know, is screaming out, I wasn't budgeted for, anything like that?
No,
No, so far so good.
no, so far.
Fingers crossed, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
We will be talking about this at strategic planning, though. We want to keep a keen eye to our IT department
Oh, yeah.
and the needs, the resource needs that are impending with them. Because as I explained, there was a large purchase of devices at the start of the pandemic to accommodate at-home learning. They're all at end of life now, and it's a little bit of a problem. So we'll but we have some solutions and some plans, and we'll talk about that further.
perfect. Interesting. I attended an Ask student or Ask engagement session on Saturday, and one of the presenters spoke to, and I don't have all the details off the top of my head, but spoke to devices and AI in the classroom and how it may not be quite as advantageous as we originally thought to have so much and to really try to find balances.
Always, right?
School.
Yeah.
So I appreciated that perspective of balance, which I think we're always striving for. So that'll be definitely part of our discussion, I guess, when the time comes. All right, any other questions of the finance reports? Seeing none, call the question, all in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Where does that bring us to? Trustee reports, I believe there are none to share this month. Does anybody have any oral reports to share?
Well, I guess we better. That's my job. Sat in front of all 15 pages of notes from
I will be providing like a more detailed report for the next thing.
spending a week in the city. I'm never writing a report because I'm a shitty writer. Well, that's not even good language. That's the kind of reporting I'm gonna do for writing. So spending a week in the city is a lot, to say the least. There is a lot of learning, a lot of things happening. There's a lot of new people in the room, returning people in the room. It's elections. It's a lot. But I found some things that I was really happy about. I really do appreciate the rural caucus. I like the rural caucus. I like that group. I like the room. We all speak the same language and we seem to have a lot of the same concerns being in part of that rural caucus. So I'm really thankful that we have that and that we have been able to make some headway. The other part too is that the government, they need us. We need to stay student focused and we need to come with sources of solutions. We need to be that kind of board. We don't need to be the board that is hollering and doing things that are unprofessional and it's downright sometimes wrong. Now, doing right, it's not always popular, but I do believe that keeping students at our focus is what we need to be doing. The government is asking a lot of us and is asking a lot of the boards, and I agree, some things are quick turnarounds. But again, I believe that our staff did a wonderful job with that. The minister took open questions for over an hour off the floor. That is not really at this time. I don't know if I, as a human being, would have stood up there and taken questions off the floor for over an hour.
I agree.
Like, and again, they are all human beings. At the end of the day, they go home, they have families, they have friends, they get beat up and memes made and things screamed and recalls and like, but at the end of the day, they are still human beings. So for him to get up and take every question non-rehearsed, not anything, for over an hour, I appreciated that. I really, really did. Is everything that everyone says just right up my alley and that I think is just tickety-boo and check, we should follow along? No, I didn't say that. But I did say that this guy got up there and he did ask a lot of things. One of the things too that somebody had asked about was following up with the vaping. And I know that that's been something that our board has talked about. I know I have attended a lot of things. I've worked with Alberta Health Services a lot on this vaping. And the marketing to kids that it is. You can't buy menthol smokes, but you can buy blueberry lemonade vape. Oh, if I was a smoker again, I'd have every kind of vape with every kind of little bejeweled, dazzled, your phone. Like you can, these vapes are out of this world. You can answer your phone and send a text as you're having a vape.
And out of control.
And they're out of control. So, I was happy to hear that, some provincial restrictions is going to become a priority on this vaping. So we can't let this go as well, right? We put vape detectors and stuff like that in, but we still need to maybe keep that on our advocacy that we don't want them to taste like blueberry and lemonade. If you taste like just yucky old nicotine, we'll have a good time. Like smoke away, but they're marketing to our young people. And we still have locations in our small towns selling to people that aren't 18. Like, so we can't lose sight of that one. I was really happy to hear that someone had asked that, and that is still on their thing. The premier came, we had an MLA breakfast, which was, wow, it's fast, it's busy. We did get a chance to talk to Todd though, so that was great. The premier's questions, they all came ahead of time, but again, she stayed for an hour and answered all the questions, whether she wanted to answer them or not. She gave the answers. And one of the things that is still there is that cross ministry work. We need to have health, pay for things that are our health. We need to have education, keep in our education portfolio. There are other ministries that we need to work with in education, and they need to find the finances to help us. It all can't come on the backs of education. Again, all of this can't come. I know. Wow, but it's, guess it's not the same when you're on a different order of government. But at this order of government, that's what I really need. And the thing too about talking is like our skilled journeyman to be that teacher. So to bridge where you can teach that stuff. So I mean, it's still on the table. It's still up for discussion. What it looks like, we're not totally sure yet, but I find that to be something positive to take out of there. And more teaching programs in some local colleges, right? Let's grow our own. Let's have them where they don't have to move far away, or maybe they really do want to be a teacher, but they want to come back and teach in their own community, where their relatives are, where their friends are, where their people are. I think that is important. Orlando Bowen, he was our teamwork, one voice, one team. He was a dynamite speaker. You know, he just, you know, use your voice for good, bring your own energy. There's no us in them. Like, and he just for an hour just held that room's attention. Because you can find when people don't hold a room of attention for a long time, because you notice people are fiddling, they're moving, they're getting a copy, they're playing on your phone. Everybody was engaged in him. I really, really enjoyed him. Fundamentals of governance, that was the one I took. So again, it's a great refresher, right? I took lots of pictures on my phone, but it's a great reminder that we are the board, you are the employee. Stay in your own sandbox, stay out of the weeds, know your role, stay in your role. For sure, sometimes when people are new, there is gonna be some dicey things. And when you first came on, you asked us to play more of a role so that we could go alongside to move it, and then asked us now to go back to our role and you stay in your role. So it was just a good reminder and a refresher of like what we are doing as elected officials and what you do as a superintendent and who follows underneath who.
Right.
I like that he had the big thing up there and trustees like right to staff. He's like, do you see the arrow? There's no arrow. That is not how it works, you know. And I mean, what did they say? They have over 100 new trustees. Like, there's a lot to learn.
71 or something like that.
Yeah, like there was a lot, right? Yeah, there's a lot in there. And then we had Tom Thompson as another presenter. Do the right thing. That's what he said. Sometimes you just gotta do the right thing. Will you be popular? Will everyone think you're this woo big champion? No. But doing what's right is what we need to do. So again, student focused, do what's right. Think big, build simple, and act now. And bring the idea. And when someone brings you an idea or sometimes has a complaint, ask what the bigger issue is. Ask what the bigger issue is, because sometimes there's a bigger issue and they're just giving you a little bit of snippet, but it's to ask that question of what is the bigger issue going on. That was a good one for me, because sometimes I think, I won't even tell you what sometimes I think. We're in a public meeting. And our whys. Why are we here as a trustee? Why do we want to be here? Why did we run for this position? And you know, did we run for the right reasons? Do you run for your own agendas? And why are you here? So I thought that was really good. And then we had our meeting with the architects. And so that for me is my report. I enjoy being away, but I can sure tell you I enjoy coming home. I'm not a big city person. And there's just a lot in your head for a long time. And here we back on Tuesday. We just got in on Friday and I'm like, oh my God, I can't even think about how to write a report out of all those pages and things flagged, right? It's just a lot, but I appreciated our time away. You know, I think as our board, we're ready to do some good work and get ready and down to business here for the next 4 years.
Thank you for that report, Joy.
Tammy,
Just TIBA related, there is going to be a trustee representative orientation coming up for the new TIBA representatives for the school boards across the province. That's going to be on the 4th of December. I will attend that. I'm actually going to little bit of presenting with that as a returning trustee. And the TIBA annual general meeting will be on January 13th. And they will be electing a new board of directors with the 7 trustees from the TIBA representative. So that will be happening on the 13th of January.
and the AGM is for the TIBA 61. Thank you for that. Anybody else have any reports? Any more
I'll do a
reports?
brief verbal one. Going to the 6 days in the city was, like Tammy often says, it's like drinking from a fire hose.
Yeah.
There was a lot of information, but some of the things that really piqued my interest or gave me some ways to think was who are, with Tom Thompson was, one of the things that I think this board needs to look at in the moving forwards is sitting down with our strategic, making a strategic plan to sit down with our collaborators and our partners on make it part of our policy. That was one of the things that came out of that meeting was sometimes we tend to have these ideas and we think we'll meet with them or talk to them, but it never happens. But one of the things that came out of that, Steve and I both got that out of that was, making that a plan, making that part of our policy that whoever is our 5-star, 3-star, 1-star, whatever it is, sit down and meet with them on a regular basis. And one of the other things was to really look big at what we can do. We often hear the conversation, and we're kind of talked about that in closed too, is the discrepancy between charter schools, private schools, and public schools. And one of the best ways, that was what we heard in quite a few different sessions, was rather than rally against charter schools and private schools, is make our public schools better than a charter school. Be innovative. Rather than just rolling things out like we normally do, start making it our division, our schools, a reason why people want to come here. So that's big shoes for us to fill, and that makes us sit back and have some pretty big ideas that we need to come up with. But I think that's a really good challenge. Seeing that right now with the farm at Prairie River School, and I think we have just so many more things that we can be doing. I hope that our board will lead the challenge, and we will be presenting to the province what we are doing, what public schools can do with our resources. So that was cool. And the other thing is, I was really pleased to be invited. Tammy and I were invited to do our Remembrance Day ceremonies at 2 of our schools, and it was an honor to attend. So I thank the schools for that, for inviting us in.
Thank you, Michael, for that report. Steve.
I'll keep mine brief since it's all been covered already. The only addition I have really is I've attended the E.G. Wallstrom School Council meeting. They had enough reform and to establish their school council, which is a win. I think it went a little long last time, so they managed to do that. And then unfortunately, I'm missing Roland Mitchers tonight. Right. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you everyone for those reports. That was amazing to hear. And we did have a wonderful week of a lot of learning. It is a long week, but we always come back to the board table with renewed ideas and renewed, I guess, to move forward.
It was quite neat to sit down with 47 MLAs for breakfast. I know it was like, and not just the party and powers MLAs, but we met with the different NDP. Like, it was interesting to just have that networking
And perspective.
Yeah.
And perspective, for sure. There are a couple things that I, from our time away, that I picked up on top of all of the stuff that everyone else covered. Minister Nicolaides did, in regards to the classroom complexity cabinet committee, he did say that there would be a teacher advisory council formed. I have that in my notes. I hope I'm not speaking out of turn. And so I'm wondering, do we know how to get any of our interested teachers onto this council?
The complexity council, teacher advisory.
Teacher advisory council is what he mentioned.
I don't think, I see officially. I don't think
Has it?
It's
not officially been rolled.
I haven't been rolled out. Okay.
It hasn't received any.
Okay. I
Certainly, as soon as we get, because I
would love to be
Obviously.
available to our team.
yeah,
Yes.
obviously, we have an invested interest in that. Yeah, so.
Perfect. And I think the other things were mentioned by everyone. I did have a question. He brought up in terms of dual credits and using skilled journeyman. Joy, you brought that up.
Yeah.
It's a great concept. But from what I understand, those skilled journeymen, in order for them to be the instructors in our schools, need to become teachers. And they talked about the bridging program.
Yeah.
Why do they need to become teachers? Like, why is that? Is there,
Right on the polytechnic side.
like, I understand the bridging and I understand some will want to, but is there a way for us sometimes in our smaller communities where we do have skilled journeymen all around us to sometimes bring them in to teach certain concepts without them having to become teachers?
Well, we have.
You want me to start?
Sure,
yeah.
So first of all, in order to instruct, of course, we must work with and uphold what the parameters are that are set forth by the association and by the Alberta government. And so thus far, or not thus far, but we need to have licensed teachers to teach in the province. That's right. And that
Public school.
in public school. So we will always have to look at some sort of bridging, because at the end of the day, we have to have even a skilled tradesperson, if they're going to be alone in front of kids, they have to have a teaching certificate behind them as well.
There is no opportunity, and I'm just thinking.
Yeah, oh no, exactly.
I'd said the box a little bit, but there's no opportunity to have a skilled journeyman journey person.
Right.
Bathroom under the supervision of a certified
You
teacher.
can certainly do that.
And we have had circumstances where we do that.
Okay,
For lots of CTS courses, you know, even if you get.
back in the day hairdressers.
Yes, that's what, yeah, and we have that scenario in some places where you bring them in for a certain. And they are under the supervision of a teacher, they're always in there together, you know, you
Yeah, kind
invite
of.
them in for things and. Yeah, and you have to financially compensate them, and sometimes that's a barrier.
Sometimes, yeah.
Yeah, sometimes.
Yeah, one of the
Right
things-
person too.
We used to do that at EW Pratt when Trevor Szarowski was running it. He had Gunther working there.
Yeah, I thought we have done it. in the
We've done
past.
that.
Darcy Servant as well.
Yeah, well, he did the bridging
That
program.
bridging program.
Yeah, it was amazing for him. Because one of the things I'm hearing both from the minister and the premier is they're challenging us to be creative. They're challenging us to think outside the box and see what we can do within the resources that we have available to us. So I'm willing to take those leaps for the sake of our kids and their education. So, and they're also always open to suggestions as opposed to, we know what's going wrong. They know what's not working. They're hearing it. But what could work instead is something that we can also challenge ourselves to. Bring to them. Yeah. Tammy.
I think in regards to that specifically, Karen, what he mentioned, the department has been holding meetings for well over a year with key stakeholders across the province around how we bring some of those highly skilled professionals into our schools in a way that compensates them for their skill, not their teaching degree, because their skill, none of the teachers in our division could walk in and teach welding. And the other thing.
Some can.
Well, but very few, right? Like in all honesty, right? Like without doing the bridging program.
The gap,
Right? But one of the things that I've heard said at multiple different tables is one of the things that we consistently forget to talk about when we're talking about tradespeople is that anyone who is a master electrician or a master welder and who is certified in 8 million different ways, 9 times out of 10, they have been teaching young adults who are getting their trade for decades. A lot of the people that are coming into our schools are at the stage where their bodies are starting to be a little tired from all of the physical work that they've been doing through their trades work. And they want to continue to do and impart knowledge and do it in a process where it's a little warmer, and a little less stressful. And for some reason, there's these blinders on to the realization that most of these tradesmen who are at that level have been teaching for a long time, like genuinely teaching, and in far more hazardous conditions and far more intense ways sometimes, because they're teaching their young welders and their electricians on high-rise buildings or, inside of an oil tanker that's been cleaned out, right? And so they're teachers. And somehow maybe we need to recognize what that means in a bridging program. right?
Maybe
And that conversation has happened a couple of times at tables I've sat at. And so there's some value in recognizing that if you've been kicking around the can as a welder for the last 30 years, odds are you've taught a few people how to weld. So how do you recognize that?
Right. Absolutely.
Good for that. All right, anything else for trustee reports? Thank you, everybody, for your contributions. Let's move on to 10.4, standing committee reports. Are there any standing committee reports? Not this month, right? On to the space here. These are correspondence. 11.1.1 PSBA letter to Minister Nicolaides is attached. Any questions on that in particular? Not, hold on here, let me just list them all and then we'll see if we have questions. 11.1.2 PSBA, the advocate, which they're shared to us from the Public School Boards Association. 11.1.3, the Electoral Boundaries Commission call for input. And then 11.1.4, letter of support for Charlotte Bazook, president of ASBA. Charlie was indeed successful in being acclaimed as president of Alberta's first time in association.
Decades.
So any questions on the proposed one?
The Electrical Boundaries Commission, maybe we could take a look at that in our next GNP about what that looks like across our division. There will definitely be some impacts to how we communicate and where we communicate and who with, based on the potential changes we could face. So could we maybe
Align it to the
dig into
agenda.
what that looks like and have some of those, that information readily for this week.
Yeah, the deadline's December 19th for written submissions.
So that would work nicely with the date of our GMP, which is December 8th.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Next regular board meeting will be held December, someone help me out. 2025. And following that, I will call for a motion to adjourn. Steve, thank you.
Motion to adjourn.
And do we have to vote on that? All in favor? I'm not sure if we have to vote on that one. Anyhow, it's carried.
Thank you, Karen, for running that meeting.
And
Appreciate that.
Problem.